Not an urgency that I had. The first church, we had those 17 people. I got on the field in January of that year. I was planning to start in the fall. That sounded good to me. And my team was like, I started training them, we started praying, and they said, well, let's start on Easter. They said that in February. And I said, we can't start on Easter. And they said, but you've trained us. That's a great time to start a church. Most likely time unchurched people will come. Let's start on Easter. I said, well, we can't do it. And I named 10 things that why we couldn't do it. And you know, from a meeting facility to, you know, Sunday school stuff, nursery stuff, sound system, all these things we didn't have. And so then they said, well, look, can we pray about them? And I said, well, yeah, we can pray about it, kind of thing. We prayed about it. And you know what? A week later, God raised up every single one of those things. And I said, okay, let's start on Easter. And so we planned to start on Easter. I said, now how many do you think we should pray for? And I was thinking like 100. To me, that was huge in those days. I was in my 20s. I was like, if we had 100 with 17, that'd be huge. And they're like 150. And I'm like, oh no, I've created a faith monster. I can see it now. We'll have 101, and they're going to be disappointed because we didn't reach 150 people. And by God's grace, we had 154 people that came. Cool. And people receiving Christ that first Sunday, that launch Sunday. And so my point is, you want to create an urgency as you go into this. I wouldn't recommend, that was just a God thing. We've got a friend named Nelson Searcy. Nelson was planning to launch large. Nelson didn't really launch large. Something happened called 9/11. He was in Manhattan, and he was like the only church in Manhattan that met the Sunday after the towers went down. And so they were thrust into starting the church. They hadn't planned it, and sometimes those things happen. But normally you've got this time, and you're moving into this philosophy. So you have this first service. This is your big momentum builder. You have that gathering, the preview. Then you say you got a whole nother month. And it's your job as the leader to really hold them off. All the people around you, oh, Mark, that was so great. Why do we have to wait a month? Let's just go. We had 200 people. Let's just meet next Sunday. Let's just go. And you're like, no, we have a strategy here. We're gathering. We're building. And if this think of it, if it was going to go on like this, we had more boards, it would go on, and you're going to have different people. Somebody who shows up for the first one may not come again till the third one, and then you have 5, and then they may not come till the launch. But the key is you get all these groups of people, and then you bring them together for the launch, and it's powerful. It's incredible. So what do you do in between? Well, you have the monthly, and then we call it leadership training. In your notes, it says a launch team activity. You could serve the city. Mark did a lot of serving the city, a lot of passing out waters, gas buy-downs, that kind of stuff. My philosophy was, I want to train them to be experts in church planning. So everything I'm learning, I'm passing on to them. I'm teaching in. Here's what to expect. Here's how we deal with the chairs. See, if you're going to expect 100 people, the average lay guy will say, let's set up 110 chairs. No. We want to set up 90 chairs or 80 chairs because we want to add. Doesn't make sense to them. Or if you have 2 services and one service is smaller or larger, you adjust the chairs. Their thinking is, why not just leave them? Why not set way more? And who cares if you have empty seats? There's a whole strategy behind that. So you're teaching them. We went through the first few chapters in the book of Acts. I mean, how can you improve on that large launch and what God did in the book of Acts and how he did that and what they were doing in preparation for all of that. So that's what we do at the launch team. And then, Mark, comment on this. What do we call this? After that second week, what is this here?
That's called a comeback event. And like Dave was saying, week 1 is the preview service. Week 2 is the launch team meeting. You're getting the launch team together. You're sharing stories. You're getting everybody pumped up. Some people are tired. So it's going to be important to share some of the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. Share the stories of people who have accepted Christ. Have an opportunity for everybody to get together and share some of the God moments and the God stories that happen during that preview service. Week 3, you do a comeback event. And what you want to do is you want to market that comeback event during the preview service. And you say, hey guys, what we want to do is we want to be able to get to know each other as a church family. So we're going to have a barbecue at the park. You know, you have a bunch of ideas down there, examples of comeback events. You have parties. Hey, everybody, I want to invite you over to my house. You can see how the upper crust lives. A recreational activity. Some people have rented out bowling alleys for the family, picnics, barbecues. What you want to do is you want to have an opportunity for people to come together in an informal atmosphere, for them to get to know you, for them to get to know the people of the church. Birds of a feather flock together. You can be the greatest preacher in the whole world, but you know what someone wants to know? They want to know if you guys aren't weird.
Are you real?
Right?
Yeah.
They want to know if there's someone at that church that talks like them, or somebody who walks like them, someone who thinks like them. So that's a good opportunity in an informal atmosphere. Kind of get everybody together and just say, hey, we want to invite you to this event. It's going to be pretty low-key. We're all going to just get to know each other as a church family, the kind of church family that God wants us to be. That's even going to kind of preempt some of the small groups that you want to launch later on, because you're already establishing the importance of community. Typically, what I will do at the end of that comeback event too is I'll say this, hey guys, don't forget that in 2 weeks, this is when our next preview service is going to be. Did you guys like the last one? That was awesome, wasn't it? Okay, now if you want to be a part of that, we would love for you to do that. So if you're kind of thinking that you like this church and if you want to be a greeter, hey, just show up 30 seconds early. You just have to have teeth and know how to smile. So come. Be a part of it. The quicker you can begin to integrate and assimilate people, the greater that launch team's going to grow, the greater potential you have for growth.
So you have the monthly preview. Then, like Mark said, you have a time of debriefing with your core group. It's a time to share wins. What did you see? What did you notice? What is God doing? It's an exciting time, and you're doing training with them as well. Then you're having this comeback event. The whole goal here is to invite people over to this a month later and to invite them to get them to come to a comeback event. If you can rub shoulders with them, if you can relate to them, this is all about building relationship. Mark has found, the best ones in terms of, if that's the goal, building relationship, have been to get them to come into our home. If we can get them into our home, it's an amazing thing. And you know, most people have never been in a pastor's home. Even people who are in church, not unchurched people, most people have never been in a pastor's home. So you invite them into the home. If you can get them into a home, this becomes huge. Or you can do it at a park. We rented a bowling alley and did like 8 lanes and had a bowling thing. It's just to have fun. There's no agenda. You just build relationship with them. That's the comeback. And then you get them. The goal is then to get them to come to the second preview. The goal is not here to even mention this. Our goal is not to get them to come to this and this and this. Our goal is just to have them come to a comeback event in 2 weeks and then come to a worship service in 1 month. And why do they like once a month church, Mark?
Oh man, because if your target group is the unchurched, see, you're sitting there thinking, we're only meeting once a month, we're not a real church. If your target group really is the unchurched, they're not used to going to church in the first place. So they'll see your thing and go, once a month, man, that's the kind of church I want to go to.
Yeah, I didn't know if they were from church or unchurched, but they'd say, I would actually hear them going out saying, Mommy, I like this church. They only meet once a month. I like this one.
And can I say one thing? Let me tell you this. One of the important things of the preview process is, I use the analogy that it's almost kind of like this. You're building tension on a bow. Like a bow and arrow, you're building tension on a bow. If you just have a little bit, doink, you know, the arrow kind of drops to the ground and it doesn't really do much useful work. With each preview service, you're adding a little bit more tension. And a little bit more tension, and a little bit more tension. And you want that thing to explode by the time you let it go, because that's when that arrow is going to do the most useful work. Let me tell you what the sentiment's going to be after your first preview service. You're going to have 2 ideas. Number 1, that was awesome. And number 2, your launch team's going to say this, I'm so glad that we don't have to do that next week. Yeah. Because you don't know how to set all that stuff up and break it down.
Not just the launch team, you.
Oh,
you
yeah,
feel
absolutely.
that. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I got 3 more weeks to prepare for this again. Yeah. Just in terms of expectations, I think those are huge. If this was a weight loss thing, Mark's results would not be typical, obviously. Mark launched with 200 at his first preview, went down to about 175, and it doesn't go like this. People think we're going to have 5 previews, and it's going to go like this. It doesn't. Usually it's like this. Mark's was like, 200 down to 175, maybe up a little. So it's more kind of like that is the reality of what preview services are like. So I just want you to know that in terms of expectations, what to expect with the preview services. So let's get into, Mark, now kind of tips for launching preview services. Okay. Obviously, they're preparing for the grand opening. Details are important. It's not a let your hair down service. You're going to be promoting it. We talked about resisting the pressure. Planning good comeback events is huge. And then continuing to train the launch team for ministry. And then talk about this. Here's one you might want to add as a bullet point. Determine the date and season for starting. Determine the date and season. For example, Mark's in Southern California. He's pretty safe. He could start in the fall. He could start in the spring. Probably wouldn't want to start in the middle of summer where you're located in the Empire. Yeah. But we devised a strategy where he started first preview in October, went November 2nd, December, Christmas Eve became the third preview, January, launched in February with the idea that if we could get those 353 people who came for Easter to invite their friends, who came for his grand opening, to come back for Easter about a month and a half later, it would be kind of a double whammy. Kind of boom, boom, momentum builder. So he had 353 for Easter, and then, for your launch, and how many did you have for Easter, the first 400. Easter? Over 400. Yeah. So a little over 400 for his launch, and then he kind of grew the church from there. And then it went down. What did it go down to, like the season after Easter? What were you averaging?
We probably went from about 200 to 250.
Okay,
somewhere in there.
So they're already right at the 200 barrier, and they just blew through that in the first 6 months to a year. And that was the thing that worked. And kind of a good goal I learned from Rick Warren, if you start your church with, say, 150 people, and that's your launch, the goal is then a year from then to be running 150 people on an average Sunday. Okay, does that make sense? So you got that. So that's kind of the goal. Because if you start with 150, when we started with 150, we got back 90 the way that we did it. But see, we went from 17, 150, 90, and then we grew the church from 90. And we used kind of a big day. And this, I won't go into this because this is about the launch, but I want to plant this seed. The same strategy with the W that you saw here, it's not only a methodology to launch the church, it's a methodology to grow the church. So here, instead of doing the previews, you decide which of those are going to be your big days during the year. For example, obviously Easter is a huge day. Mother's Day should be a big day in your church. Christmas Eve can be a huge day. A Friends Day in the fall that's a nothing day in your community can be a big day. And you use the same methodology. It's just spread out longer over a year calendar. So you're doing the big day, you're doing leadership training, you're scheduling an intentional comeback event to build relationship with all those new guests who came to the big day, and then you're following that up with more leadership training and then another big day down the road. So you may have 6 or 7 big days during the year. So it's not only a methodology to launch large, but it's a methodology to keep growing your church.